Welcome to Love Thy Lawyer, where we talk with attorneys about their lives and careers. I'm your host, Louis Goodman. Today, we welcome Gordon P. Firemark to the podcast. Based in LA, Mr. Firemark represents producers, artists, and businesses in television, film, publishing, and digital media. He's worked in the field of copyright and trademark enforcement. He's taught law at many of the law schools and universities throughout the Los Angeles area. He's a super lawyer. He's presented at numerous conferences and business events and been a guest expert on over 150 podcasts. Gordon Firemark, welcome to Love Thy Lawyer.
Thank you, Louis. It's great to be here. I'm honored to be a part of your show.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you in person. Tell us, where are you speaking to us from right now?
I'm sitting in my home office in Saugus, California, north of the LA area.
Can you explain how you understand your practice? What type of practice do you have in your words?
In my words for the kind of practice I have starts with lifestyle. It's a lifestyle law practice, not the other way around. A law practice lifestyle was never something I wanted. So I have built a practice doing entertainment, media, business law, helping creators get their messages out and those kinds of things. Transactional stuff, primarily, for most of the last 33 years or so. And I get to put my head down at night knowing I've done some good work for good people and help them get their messages out, and that's what's important to me.
How long have you been doing this type of work?
I started practice, I finished law school in 1992, and started, my first job was in 1993 and doing litigation in a small boutique. And that lasted briefly before I went out on my own for various reasons. And most of that time has been focused on the transactional side.
Where are you from originally?
Moved around a lot when I was little, but I grew up mostly in the LA area. I finished high school here and then off to college in Oregon, back to LA for the entertainment industry.
So what high school did you go to?
Palos Verdes High School.
And then when you went to college, you went where?
Go Ducks, University of Oregon.
Now, at some point, you graduated from the Duck University and you went to law school. Where did you go to law school?
I went to Southwestern. I actually, after college, took a year off. I applied to schools and just decided to take a year, work in the entertainment industry.
What did you do in between college and law school? You were in the entertainment industry. What specifically did you do?
I was a line producer for television, sports, and live events coverage for a cable operation that later was absorbed by the big sports networks that came up in the late 80s.
So here's a two-part question. When did you first realize that you wanted to be a lawyer? And when did you actually send in the money, fill out the application, and really do it? And what were the things that prompted you in those two endeavors?
The flippant part of me wants to say, I'm not sure I ever realized I wanted to be a lawyer. It was my senior year in college when I was studying radio, TV, and film production and stuff like that. I had finished the major and I was taking some of the graduate level classes in government regulation of media and public policy and management in the industry and those kinds of things. And I was getting the top scores out of all the students in these classes. And the professor who taught one of those classes, Deanna Robinson, pulled me aside after class one day and said, hey, you got the top score in this class. You really got an aptitude for this stuff. Have you thought about going to law school? I was in the middle of applying to USC Film School and things like that. And it had occurred to me. And later that same night, I was talking with an old high school friend on the phone, and he said, I'm applying to law school. And I said, I think I might too. I got into law school. So that was part of the decision making. But it was really an afterthought for me.
When you told your friends and family, hey, I'm going to law school, what did people say?
I grew up in a medical family. My dad was a physician, my mom an audiologist. And when I brought the subject of law school up, it was like an epiphany. It's like everybody, of course you're going to go to law school. It was the argumentativeness. And I could have made a case for the moon being made of green cheese, those kinds of things as a kid. Yeah, it didn't come as a big surprise. It was, why didn't we think of that sooner?
Can you talk a little bit about when you first graduated from law school and the moves that you made and take us through the path to where you are now in your practice?
Yeah. So the early 90s, for those who were around will remember, there was a TV show, LA Law, on the air. Made it look extraordinarily sexy to be a lawyer, especially in Los Angeles. And that meant there were a lot of students applying and going through law school. And that meant a glut coming out right at a time when at least the entertainment industry, I think the legal industry as a whole, was contracting and firms combining and merging. And so jobs were scarce. I came out of law school without a plan, without a job, without a clear path, other than knowing it was going to be entertainment law because of my background and what my resume looks like. And that made it even a little harder to find a job. I ended up starting with a firm, actually replacing a law school classmate of mine who was moving on, and he was given the mission of find his replacement, and he thought of me, and it worked out okay. This was a boutique entertainment law litigation firm that was still just getting on its feet. And I was there for maybe half a year, 6 months or so, before the economics of the firm and the dynamics of personalities in the firm made it pretty clear to me that this wasn't where I needed to be. So my grandfather, so I left that firm, and my phone started ringing. People that I'd known from the television business and the theater business that I'd worked in, and just friends and folks who now knew I was a lawyer needed a little help with this, a little collection matter, the dribs and drabs that young lawyers do. And my grandfather was visiting. I was sitting at my parents' kitchen table doing this at one point, and my grandfather said, "Let me give you some money. Go open an office, buy a desk," that kind of thing. And so I had my first shareholder.
Grandpa.
Yeah, exactly. And he staked me to probably the first year's worth of rent in the office and those kinds of things. And that was the beginning, the runway. It took longer than that to really get off the runway, but became a solo practice lawyer very early on in my career without a lot of experience to guide me. And it was a lot of trial and error and a lot of hit or miss. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I've learned so much.
That kind of brings up a question for me, which is, you've been practicing law now for over 30 years.
Yeah.
You're obviously a talented guy. There's a lot of things that you could do, and yet you've chosen to stay as a lawyer, as a practicing attorney. Why is that? What's that about? What is it that you like about practicing law that keeps you as a lawyer?
One, the money. You can charge a nice fee for your time and services. Okay. I think I'm serving. I'm helping people, as I've said, achieve the kind of impact and influence and income that they want, doing the kind of work they love. Creative people are a breed apart. And I like to say, because of my background in live theater and then in the film, I speak creative. And so I'm in a unique position to bridge a gap between the creative mind and the business legal mind, and to help them make deals that make sense, that protect their interests. So that's very rewarding. But also, I've had a lot of side hustles along the way. I've taught university and law school club, things like that, which I view as a sort of giving back. And that I built some online course to help train folks, again, in the same field, but the folks who aren't going to hire lawyers still need help. So I'm here for them. And I get to tinker with technology and websites and podcasting and all these kinds of things. And it's fun. So I guess what's made me be able to stay doing the lawyer thing is that I have these other interests, and I'm able to divide my attention a little bit and enjoy other things.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think a lot of people don't realize it, and I'm not sure all lawyers are doing it, but I think practicing law really can be fun. And my dad practiced law for many years, and he always said, law is a huge field. There's so many different things that you can do in it, that you can use it for. And I think that's becoming more and more true now as we move into this world where so much is opened up.
Yeah. There's the big law grind thing that I think wears a lot of lawyers down. But I think those of us that are solo and small firm practice, we are able to build that lifestyle practice that gives us what we need and lets us have other interests and enjoy, whether it's hobbies. I don't have a sailboat. I don't, those kinds of things. So I indulge my extracurricular stuff in things that are related to what I do as a lawyer. It's good.
If a young person were just coming out of college and thinking about a career, would you recommend the law?
It's a strong maybe. If someone like I was coming out, I probably would say no. I think that if I had it to do over again, I don't know that I would. It's been harder than I wanted it to be, harder than I liked.
Yeah.
Very rewarding, but
practicing law is hard. It is. Yeah, it's true.
And
it can be fun, but it's hard.
Yeah. So I would say to someone who thinks they want to be a lawyer,
Right.
make sure you really want to be a lawyer. Make
Right.
sure you know what you're doing. Shadow some lawyers, get a sense of what the work is really like before you make the decision, because that's something I didn't do. It was like, oh, that sounds like a fun idea. And my friends are doing it. I didn't really know what being a lawyer was going to mean.
How about the business of practicing law? I bring this up a lot, but one of the things that bothers me is that law schools absolutely fail to explain basic business practices to people who need to understand basic business practices in virtually any kind of law practice. Maybe if you're working for the government or you're a public defender or a deputy DA, you don't really need to worry about it too much. But in virtually any other kind of practice, whether it's a small firm, big firm, you need to have some understanding of business. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your business and how your business of practicing law has gone for you and your thoughts on that.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's not just law schools that fail. I think it's colleges and even the high school experience could do a better job of teaching about business basics, sales, marketing, how to promote and solve problems that people actually have and want to pay for solutions. That's ultimately what the business is. There's a lot I wish I had known. Came out and I knew how to think like a lawyer, how to research, and I had some expertise in a certain areas of practice and knew where to find answers. But where do you find clients? How do you get, especially as a solo? What's the trick? And it was really throw things against the wall, see what sticks. And I wish I'd had a little more training and maybe a little more background and experience from time working in firms. But
what stuck for you? What stuck for you?
Content marketing. Coming out in early 90s, this was the beginning of the World Wide Web when Al Gore invented this thing called the superhighway. And I was one of the early lawyers to even put up a website, a billboard along that superhighway. And certainly in California, I think I was among the first 5 or 10 people who did it. And I got a lot of feedback. Oh, are you sure that's not advertising that's going to get you in trouble? Those kind of things. So I found my way.
What year was this?
1993.
Okay.
And so I had a website and I started, my first marketing initiative was a printed newsletter that I called Entertainment Law Update. And I did a 4-page mailer that I sat and licked envelopes and stamps and sent out this mailer quarterly. Just an article I'd written and some thoughts about this and an invitation to get a hold of me. And the phone started ringing a little bit slow.
Yeah.
A few years goes by and then email is becoming more ubiquitous. And I learned that I could do this as an email newsletter, and I adopted that approach and turned the newsletter content into website content and teaching a principle and proving myself as a thought leader in those areas really was the answer, because when people went searching, they would see my name. And building that email list was just a matter of anybody I knew. Who else do you know? Tell them about this kind of, it's just that trying to get it viral. Trying is the key word there. And over time, that evolved into blogging and then a podcast.
Is there anything that you know now that you really wished you'd known when you first started out?
I really wish I had known that formulation of identify a problem that people have and want to pay to solve and then provide that solution.
Yeah.
I think that's what we do as lawyers. But if you don't know who the ideal client is and what their problem is, you're throwing everything out there. And it could have been much more targeted, much more specific, and much more effective had I got that message early on. It really took a long time for me to grok that concept.
What do you think's the best advice that you've ever received? And or maybe it's the same answer, what advice would you give to a young attorney just starting out?
The best advice I've ever received, I think, goes in that when you're going through hell, keep going.
Yeah.
When things are hard, that's not when you stop. That's when you double down, push a little harder, because then you get through it and you have that body of experience. So there's that. Finish what you start is pretty strong, although you have to take that with the grain of salt that, hey, sometimes you start something and realize you really don't need to finish it. Shouldn't bother. It's not going to have the return you hoped for, whatever. So being a little ruthless about cutting the chaff, eliminating the excess. And I think that for young lawyers especially, it's really always ask, what's the return I'm expecting, and monitor. Are you getting there? Or is this just spinning my wheels? Is it taking me off on a sidetrack?
You've had a long opportunity to observe the justice system, the legal system. Do you think that it's fair?
I think that the justice system has the potential for fairness. I think that some of that potential has been lost or squandered at the altar of big business and dollars.
I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. What's your personal life, family life been like, and how has that fit into the practice of law? How's the practice of law fit into your other life?
Great question. I allowed my focus on my career and my practice to take the front seat for, the first 10 years of my practice, about a little longer than that.
You have to, don't you?
Yeah, I guess it didn't really turn in the direction of my personal life until my mid to late 30s. I met the woman who I'm now married to. We've been married. Actually, today is our 20th anniversary.
Wow, congratulations.
And we have 3 beautiful kids and
Fantastic.
2 dogs and 3 cats and
wow,
a menagerie here at the house. And I love it. She's a wonderful woman who has grounded and centered me in ways that I didn't know were possible, challenges me in ways I didn't know were possible. And the kids do that too. But they're all great people.
So do you see any of your kids as being budding attorneys?
The youngest is at 12. He's a real smart aleck, a class clown, always got the twisting, playing with the words. I hope it's not lawyer in training stuff. I hope he's stand-up comic or something. But no, I think we'll see where he goes with it. He says he wants to be an astrophysicist, but the other kids they're focused in other directions.
What sort of recreational experiences do you enjoy when you're not practicing law?
I enjoy travel. I don't get to do it in a non-business context nearly as much as I would like. It's been a few years since we had a real vacation, and with kids, and it's just challenging. Yeah. But I also enjoy theater, all forms of entertainment, really. Yeah. But live theater has a particular energy, a particular kind of creativity. Yeah. And having grown up working behind the scenes in theaters, I just need to breathe theater air from time to time. And so musical theater is a big thing. My wife and I bonded over it on our first date and had a themed wedding around musical theater and all of those kinds of things. So that's really a passion of mine that unfortunately I also don't get to indulge as often as I'd like, but I try to keep my fingers in the pie.
Is there someone either living or out of the historical past who you really like to meet?
I always go back to my dad, who passed away just as I was getting on my feet as a lawyer. And he was a physician, but he had a unique interest and passion and curiosity about life and everything else. And so we had good conversations, and I wish that there were more of those. But historical figures, I would say Thomas Jefferson. I think Ben Franklin would have been a fascinating person to converse with.
What mistakes do you think lawyers make?
I think ego drives a lot of mistakes for lawyers. I think we get full of ourselves, or we pursue the trappings of success as lawyer, sometimes at the expense of being good at what we're doing or doing what we do well. Yeah. And I'd say for young lawyers, especially, this is something I did a little bit as a young lawyer, the cars and the suits and the expenses on things that in the scheme of things really don't.
So how do you define success for yourself?
For me, success is doing good work for good people, helping good people. It's that get the message out for people who have something to say and protect them while they do it so they can continue doing the thing they love. That's part of it. Living a life on my own terms, being able to have the home I want and the family life I want. And I've been working from a home office since 2001, something like that. And that's meant that when the kids came along, I was able to be here at dinner time. Sometimes I had to go back in the office after, but I was able to be with them from dinner time to bedtime and up in the morning to get them off to school because I didn't have to do an hour-long commute or something like that. And for me, that was tremendously valuable. I'm a family man. It's important to me. And ultimately, raising these good people to be good people is my real definition of success.
I know you do a lot of teaching and speaking. What sort of things do you like to teach, and what sort of things do you like to speak about?
What I like to teach about is the things that I have the expertise, the intellectual property, entertainment law, media. I had a great experience the last few years teaching a course on media law and ethics and really talking about the role of journalism in our society and culture. And I talk about these things and think about them with respect to the podcasting community. One of the things I think is a flaw in the podcasting world is that we have, it's a good thing and a bad thing, so many people coming into podcasting with no understanding of what journalism is, and yet they're doing these true crime shows or they're investigating a story of some sort, but not doing it with journalistic know-how. And so I want to share more of that and help people understand, but there's more to it than just find a nugget of something and share it with the world.
Yeah, anyone who's listened to my podcast on any kind of regular basis knows that this is not journalism. This is Lewis talking to his friends.
Sure.
Let's say you came into some real money, let's say $3 or $4 billion. What, if anything, would you do differently in your life?
I'm in the moment in my life where retirement is an idea that appeals to me. It's a ways off with the 3 kids not yet in college. But I think that with a big influx of money, I would probably semi-retire myself, focus on really only taking cases and clients that really appeal to me for whatever reason. Maybe I would find myself tilting at windmills a little bit sometimes because I could afford to. But also, I think I would focus more in on the teaching and speaking and sharing ideas and trying to change the world. A little activism and advocacy out there, I think, would fulfill me.
Let's say you had a magic wand. There was one thing in the world that you could change, the legal world, the world in general, the media world. What one thing would you like to wave your magic wand at and change?
I think I'd want to find a way to restore trust and faith in our institutions and the people behind them. I think we're in a real trust desert right now. And I think it's honestly part and parcel of many of the problems we're experiencing in America right now is nobody knows who to trust and nobody's willing to listen very much. I'm extraordinarily troubled by the way politics have led to a downfall of democratic values in a lot of ways.
What if you had a Super Bowl ad? Someone gave you 60 seconds on the Super Bowl to put out any message, advertisement, whatever you wanted to for a 60-second Super Bowl ad that would be heard and seen, obviously, by an enormous audience. What would you like to say to that enormous audience?
I think I'd like to ask everybody to remember that we're all in this together and that what's good for the greater good is good for us all. It's not just about me. It's not just about you. It's not just about any one person's interests or even one group's interests, but we really need to think, and maybe it's Pollyanna of me to say this, but let's do what's right for the world. And the rest of it will shake out. We'll figure it out.
If someone wants to contact you, someone wants to get in touch with Gordon Firemark, what's the best way to do that?
I'm fortunate to have a distinctive name. Firemark.com is the place for the law firm website. And my full name, gordonfiremark.com, for all the other stuff that I do. And so you can find me there and follow me on socials, Firemark.
And I would imagine if we just type in Gordon Firemark, attorney, LA, you'll find me. Come right up.
Yeah. Pretty prolific online presence. You'll find me in an insurance company and references to the bronze fire markers that were used to identify homes by their insurance companies back in the 19th century.
Yeah, that's a great thing. It's just one of those little things about insurance that I found out recently by listening to a podcast about insurance. Yeah. And they talked about these fire marks. Tell us just really quickly, what were the fire marks and how did that work with insurance?
The story I was told growing up is that in the 18th century, post the big London fire, the emergence of fire insurance companies came up, and there were fire brigades that were run by the insurance companies. And so they would give their customers this bronze medallion to put on the lintel of their front door that would tell the fire brigade, okay, yes, this one is covered by your insurance, so go ahead and put out the fire. And I guess the theory was that if you didn't have the right insurance, they didn't put out your fire. I've learned recently that wasn't exactly the case, but that it was to identify this house has insurance, so we're going to take care of it. And so those bronze markers have become collector's items. My mom has a collection of them hanging on the wall in her living room. And it's just a fun little bit of historical trivia. We don't know where we got the name Firemark exactly. My great-great-grandfather, who I refer to as Great-Grandpa Tevye from the old country, came over in the pre-1900 diaspora, and they gave him a new name. If they couldn't pronounce your correct name on the third try, you got a new name, and Firemark was it.
Is there anything that you'd like to talk about that we haven't discussed? Anything at all that you'd like to bring up, talk about?
I think we've covered a lot. I guess what I would like people to take away is that being a lawyer is a responsibility. And it's not just responsibility to serve our clients with zeal and integrity and all of that, but I think we also all have an obligation to give something back to the society and the world and the system that has allowed us to do what we do and make a nice living doing it and all of that. And so whether that's pro bono or teaching or volunteering at the community center or something, I would encourage all lawyers to find something that they can find rewarding in a way of giving back that isn't just about making money or just being a lawyer all the time, and have the good life by doing good for others.
Gordon Firemark, thank you so much for joining me today on the Love Thy Lawyer podcast. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Lewis. It's been fun.
That's it for today's episode of Love Thy Lawyer. If you enjoyed listening, please share it with a friend and follow the podcast. If you have comments or suggestions, send me an email. Take a look at our website at lovethylawyer.com, where you can find all of our episodes, transcripts, photographs, and information. Thanks to my guests, and to Joel Katz for music, Brian Matheson for technical support, Paul Roberts for social media, and Tracy Harvey. I'm Lewis Goodman.
I like the sound of my own voice.